following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network in conjunction with all of you out there. I mean, you guys are the ones that drive this show. We're not in conjunction with anyone anymore. It's you guys. You're the reason that we're all here for the Insider's Edge. We've reached episode 100 already at this point. This will be coming out a few weeks after that. I'm your host with the most on the West Coast, Karlifornia Haguesly. It is a joy, an honor, and a privilege to be with you all once again. And for me here, this is another name ticked off the bucket list here to interview because obviously, look, I'm a big fan of ECW, and I've been trying to get a lot of different people, personalities from ECW on the show to learn about their story. Think about the likes of John Finnegan, Jim Molyneux, Bob Artiste, not just the wrestlers, because some other guys in this company also have a story to tell. And here, right now, I have ring announcer extraordinaire, the one and only Stephen DeAngelis. How are you, my friend?
Good morning, Carl. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, bro. Doing good. It's hot and sweaty out here right now. It's hard to believe that at midnight.
But it's midnight. But it's midnight where you are, and it's that hot and sweaty.
Yeah. This is Australia. But Stephen, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me here today. And the first question, as per usual, sir, is before you got involved, how did you become a fan of professional wrestling?
Actually, I wasn't a fan of professional wrestling. I was aware of it like every kid is, but I really took more of a deep dive into it. In my profession, I'm a casting director, which I don't know if you knew that or not. But
yes.
But as a result, I was working on a campaign for a Miller Lite, which is a beer here. And I don't know if you recall the commercials that were spoofs of WrestleMania called Lightomania, and
yes.
They had an American former baseball player, then turned comedian Bob Uecker as the lead. And he was wrestling, and Jesse the Body Ventura were involved, and there were all these other celebrities to give it a celebrity rub. And I cast those commercials, so therefore I had to do a lot of research going in, like 6 months in advance of the shoot, and who we would ask and what we would do, and even finding, Bob Uecker worked under a hood in the mask because obviously he wasn't going to do the wrestling moves. And I don't know if you remember a WWF character / shady referee / wrestler named Dangerous Danny Davis.
Yeah.
and I wound up casting Danny Davis as the stunt double doing all the wrestling stuff for Uecker. So, but then I had to get all these other celebrities like Robert Goulet and all these other Las Vegas-y types involved in the shoot. And so that was my first exposure. So I had a stack of wrestling magazines in my office for research. I went to an old shops and I did a lot of research, and I was just finding out more and more about what I was trying to replicate in this camp, because it was going to be a campaign. It wasn't going to be a one shot. So I had to be able to know where this thing was headed. And so I wound up, that was my first exposure. And then the world took a strange turn for me because the advertising agency I was working for at the time had a client. There was a charity. It was one of the first wish-granting charities before Make-A-Wish, called the Starlight Foundation. And I got involved with them through the agency, and they had an emergency, and which I helped them solve, and with featuring a celebrity. So I get a call from the office one day from them saying, "Hey, we've got this child in Philadelphia who has probably 2 weeks to live, and he wants to meet these certain wrestlers." So he had a list of his favorites, and said, if we could arrange one or more, that would be great. Can you do it? It was a Friday afternoon at like 4:00 New York time, and so I called WWE, and of course, because they worked for WCW, NWA at the time, I called the office. I asked for these guys, and they say there were no professional wrestlers by that name, because if you didn't work for them, you weren't a professional wrestler. So then I start going through the magazines. And, oh, wait a minute, they're NWA guys. So I went and I tried to nose around. I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't get to anybody. But then I thought, okay, well, when's the next show in Philadelphia? Let me look at that. The next show was the Philadelphia Coliseum, was the next night, that Saturday. And then they were doing repair work for 3 months. So there was going to be no wrestling in that building. NWA wouldn't be back in Philly. They were back monthly like WWE used to be in New York. So I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? So I get the information on the family. I get up the next morning. I take a train to Philadelphia. I go to the phone booth in Philadelphia, back when they had phone booths. I call limousine companies. I get a limousine company, actually the owner, I talked him into it, drove me around all day wherever I needed to, and he was the driver. And he drove me around to make this wish happen. I was dressed in a suit and tie and an attache case. I went to the Philadelphia Coliseum. They weren't going to stop a black stretch limo. I got backstage. I was nosing around, wound up talking to somebody in promotion there who said, oh yeah, we'll help you. And then that person ghosted me and disappeared. So the show's ticking. These guys are flying out of town. What am I going to do? The person who helped me at the time was JJ Dillon. Because I went up to him and I recognized him, and I had a little cheat sheet with like photos clipped out from the wrestling magazine, like who people were that I might run into. So I explained the situation. The first match was a 6-man tag with Kendall Windham, Tim Horner, and late Brad Armstrong. And so he went up to them and said, hey, go with this guy. They were still in their gear. They grabbed their luggage. They didn't even change. They were like, you have to go, go with them. We went to the kid's house. We showed up at the kid's house. The family had no idea what the heck was going on, except these 3 wrestlers show up. We do the wish. And at the time, Brad and Tim told him, the kid's name was Troy, said, Troy, we fly out of here tonight, because they were going on a private plane. I had to get them back to the airport, by the way, in the meantime, to catch their charter back to Atlanta to do live TV. We were wrestling for the belts, and we're going to win the belts for you tomorrow morning. So we did the meeting. We did the whole thing. It was great. Flew down. They won the belts that morning. They're screaming at the TV, Troy, these are your belts, Troy. We won them for you. Of course, the announcers are like, who's Troy? They have no idea. They're thinking that maybe it's introducing a new character or something. They're trying to cover it up. And so I wound up getting involved. So I did that one wish, and then I started getting more and more. And I did entertainment wishes, but whenever there was a wrestling thing, they would call me. So I'm trying to learn a little bit more, because if I'm getting these calls, I better know where people are. And I did a charity softball game for GQ magazine, which was different all-star teams. And so because it was in the summer, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because the baseball players are all, everyone's in season, and the off season folks moved over down in Florida. What am I going to do? I'm driving home one night. I hear this thing called Wrestling Spotlight with a guy named John Arezzi, who is now back online and airing his old shows and doing a lot of stuff. So I reach out to John Arezzi and I say, do you know anybody who lives in New York? And he says, oh yeah, there's this tag team, the Power Twins, who live out on Long Island. And there's this guy named Paul E. Dangerously who lives in Scarsdale. So I reached out to Paul and we met, and he was like, absolutely. So that's how I became friendly with Paul. Paul actually played on the, if you can imagine Paul E. Dangerously playing in a celebrity softball game, and he played we rotated celebrities because we had so many. So he played the first 3 innings, and then he did play-by-play the rest of the game. So if you never probably imagined Paul being so knowledgeable of baseball and softball and stuff, but he really was. It was pretty fascinating. Among the people who were on that team were a couple of people who rose to prominence on soaps. Laura Sisk, who's now Laura Wright, who's on General Hospital, plays Carly, and also Kelly Ripa, who had just started on All My Children and now has a successful career as a talk show host and in the US. So that was my start of my relationship with Paul. And because of that, Paul would say, hey, I'm driving down to Philadelphia. This is when Eddie was still there and he was going. He said, Gilbert was involved. He said, you want to drive down to Philly? You want to travel down to Philly? So that's how I wound up backstage at the shows, through my friendship with Paul, but no indication that I would ever wind up doing anything out front. I was just there, he just wanted my feedback. He wanted my feedback as someone who's an entertainment professional, what I thought in terms of television and things. And like when the unique things would happen, like there was the famous cage match between Bad Company and Public Enemy, that with the exploding cage. The company that was supposed to deliver the cage that day didn't wind up, had some sort of conflict, and somebody came along with more money and wanted to rent every shark cage they had, because that's what they use, the shark cage, they use it in the water. And somebody wanted to do an excursion, so they didn't have anything. So I'm in New York, and I'm scrambling to try to get some sort of cage structure to the arena in Philadelphia. That's why it didn't like quite look exactly like a cage. It was as close as we could get with 12 hours notice. But so my relationship always was, Paul would call me and say, hey, what do you think? And, I would go to the shows in New York, and I thought it would be good for me, because we've got all these wrestling related wishes. If I know somebody, it's always going to be somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And if the clock is ticking on a child who's ill and every minute counts, I can't wait on Friday till Monday till the office is open for the wrestling companies. It's better for me to know, and there was no Zoom then. There was none of that stuff. We had to figure out if it was possible to get the kid to them or them to the kid. So that was my real source of my friendship, because when you bond over that kind of stuff, it's a different thing. It goes beyond friendship. It goes beyond acquaintance, because you become allies together in a mission that matters and is changing, not only for the child who's ill, but also what that represents for the family who has a kid who's ill, who gets to see their kid happy. As opposed to watching them suffer towards the end. It was a different thing. And so, I mean, listen, I could tell you, and it may shock people, or maybe not, but I could list the amount of stuff that Paul Heyman has been instrumental in terms of wish granting and connecting me with talent and other things is pretty staggering. They actually, the charity actually honored him one year. Starlight honored him, but he did nothing about getting publicity for himself about it ever. He always kept it on the down low. I always appreciated that about him. And that's why I maybe I got to see a side of him that few people get to see or share or whatever. But that's a long answer to how did I get in. I got in because of Paul, and then they were doing a show I had some Wish kids on Staten Island at a show, and 3 families. I was coming from work. I had a big meeting. I was in a suit. The ring announcer's car broke down, couldn't make it. In New York at the time, there was a curfew. So you had to get everything done by 11 o'clock. So they had to start the show on time. So Paul was like, you're in a suit, go out there. And so I went out there, and I just did what I thought was my impersonation of what somebody was. And I think the thing that turned, because I was, the fans were horrible to me because I was somebody they didn't recognize. So New York fans just booing the hell out of me. And there was this, and I think the thing that turned the tide for Paul in terms of me doing more was there was a guy in the front row, and I'll clean this up, but he was screaming in the front row, ring announcer, I slept with your mother, but not saying it so politely. So he's saying it over and over and over again. Of course, this camera's ringside. So the mic is going to pick it up. So I think, oh my God, security's going to throw this guy out. The fans are going to turn on me thinking I had him thrown out.
Yeah.
So I go to do the next. So I go to just before the next match. I stop and I say, ladies and gentlemen, and I pause, knowing he's going to scream it. So I say, everyone, hold up for a second. And I got out of the ring with the microphone, and I put them. I turned right to him, nose to nose, and said, "Do you have something you had to say to me?" And I put the mic right in his face, and he screamed, "Ring announcer, your mother." And I turned to him and said, "Dad, you're drunk. Go home." And turned around and went into the ring. And the whole place popped. He got recognition. And Paul said, "You can do this whenever you want. So how much do you want to do this?" And that was actually the turning point for me doing things more regularly. And then I did the New York shows and wherever. And then, I'm a big fan of Bob Ortiz. He and his wife Lex have always been very gracious to us. He had seasonal conflicts because he ran a hockey arena.
Yeah.
So during cold weather season, he was not available because he was running his business. And so I would go that's when I started doing the Philadelphia shows. And they were always great. And I always will say that I was a guest in Bob Ortiz's house, because that was really, Bob was there. He was, he worked with Todd Gordon during Tri-State and all those things. So he and his wife are terrific people. They were, they were very supportive of me. And so that's the intro. Like, how the heck does all this happen from someone who knows nothing about it to someone who's now involved and has a lot of friends and watches, to check up on people. And I watch regularly. I pretty much try to watch everything if I can. And that's how that all happened.
I think that has to be one of the most unique answers I've ever had for somebody. When I ask, how did you become a wrestling fan, or how did you get involved in the business, that has to be the most unique answer, because usually it's like, oh, well, me and my grandmother or my grandfather used to watch WWF on this channel at this time, and it's always the same kind of answer. But so this is interesting. It's a nice, unique perspective. I like it.
I always looked at it, because I come from a theatrical background.
Yeah.
I always looked at it like it was a theatrical piece. I looked at each match like it was a morality play, and you're developing the story of each chapter. So my perspective was really from an entertainment point of view, in terms of, getting, it's like a performer was on stage who's giving a performance, and they have to get whatever they're doing on stage and get it across the footlights to the audience, and create an emotional connection and get them invested.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated how different people would do things differently. What their personal style was for engagement. It's like actors who have great amount of range themselves in terms of their portrayals and the roles they play. So I still can't help but think of it that way. When I watch it now, do I think it's too much television and not enough live performance, like caring what the live audience is getting as opposed to what the television audience is getting? Absolutely. I liked it more when you were watching television and you were seeing the experience of the audience.
Yeah.
Now, really, and you knew that was happening. Now I feel like there's too much predetermined or premeditated, and then you get into, I won't get into it too much, but even like, the piping in of the crowd noises and the chants.
Oh,
like,
don't get me started. Because
I think that's offensive to the audience.
Yes.
Not valuing them or feeling like you have to tell them what to do. It's like, well, then why don't we do what we did during the pandemic and just pipe in the crowd noise? They got away with a lot of it when they were, during the last 18 months. And I think they thought, well, we can continue to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so to answer your question, it's always been, it's always been theater to me. It's always been about that connection and taking the audience on a ride and having a great appreciation. Also, artists in theater and film and in their acting career and singing career, they make sacrifices to get where they need to be. And I'm aware of those. I wish that wrestling fans were equally aware of the sacrifices that the wrestlers make.
Definitely. And I just wanted to talk about you as a ring announcer, and it's just something I haven't got it written down or anything. It's something that I thought of. You're talking about the performance that you would put on and the way that you saw things. When I used to see you do your ring announcing, even though you were standing still at one spot, so much energy was coming out of you. You could really feel it, and it felt like you were putting your whole body into it, despite the fact you were standing still. So that's just one compliment I wanted to give you, sir.
Well, thank you. The origin of that is interesting, because I always felt like, because of my origin in this whole thing, I always felt like I was much more one of them than one of the in-ring performers.
Right.
And so I wanted to say, if one of the audience members had a chance to be in the center of this ring, what would that feel like for them? That energy, that enthusiasm, that sense of, oh my God, I'm here in the middle of this great opportunity. And then it was interesting because, I'm a character guy. I'm not a chiseled, traditional ring announcer in any way, look-wise, And so I went to Paul and I said, hey, I said, I really want to do it. like I'm the most enthusiasm I can. And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, do you know, are familiar with a movie called Scanners? It was a sci-fi movie, but I said, you ever see Scanners? Because the idea was when things would happen, their heads would pop off. I said, I want to do ring announce as if I lift up one more second, my head will explode. I said, because if we're going to be extreme, I don't know that I should be the traditional guy that frames the introduction of new characters and wrestlers in a traditional way. We've got to be plus that. So I said, how would you feel about doing that? I mean, trying that. And he said, well, try it. And he was like, love it afterwards. He says, as long as you can maintain your voice and have a voice at the end of the night, do it. And so that's how it happened. That's how that happened. That's how that evolved. Because I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I can't be the guy that brings the energy of the room down. And especially in Philadelphia and New York with those fans, you have to match them, and then I have to get over them to be able to keep them hyped. And also, matches happen where the audience is drained because they've committed so much. And how do I keep that up? How can I keep the energy up for the audience and for the performers so that they're not 2/3 of the way through the show burnt out? How can I contribute to help the main event guys still get the recognition they deserve? And so I always looked at it like a graduation of steps. And so that was just my personal theory. Listen, I'm sure I'm not everyone's taste. In fact, I know so. But for the job that I had to do and my obligation to the performers, I felt like that's what I owed them 100%, because that's the kind of person I am. If I'm working on a project, you get 100% of me. So
that's exactly it. And that crowd in Philly or anywhere, really, any sort of ECW crowd, the energy is, you're right, it's so hot the whole show. Right. You can't be having the ring announcer just being like, and ladies and gentlemen, the next match scheduled for one fall is tag team contest. They wouldn't. It wouldn't work, really, would it? If the ring announcer was being like that, it works so much more that you're that animated. So I totally agree with what you have to say there. Right. So being a ring announcer and having not really been a massive fan of professional wrestling, being an ECW, you have a pretty damn good seat in the house to see some of these crazy moments and antics. Is there anything that stands out from your time in Extreme Championship Wrestling where you saw something happening and you're like, I can't believe that they're doing this right now?
Well, when there was the match with Terry Funk and Shane, I think it was Terry and Shane, and Mick was involved, and there was a branding iron, and the branding iron dropped on the mat. And I ran over and grabbed the end of the branding iron because I was afraid it was going to burn the match. But then I'm like, holy crap, I'm holding a burning branding iron. Like, how long can I hold this before it gets too hot? And they had a bucket of water, thank God, nearby. And I was able to put it in the bucket. But I was like, that was a moment where I thought, okay, you let your emotions get away with you now. What do you do? Listen, anytime the audience was legitimately surprised, I loved. Anytime someone, won a title, because that would be a career advancement. I mean, it's funny to say that I wouldn't think that one thing stood out to me. Every show was really about the whole experience of the whole card. As opposed to it being one particular match or moment, because I know everything sets up. Again, I think like theater, everything sets up everything else. But there were a few things. I'm trying to think. Listen, I didn't announce the show, but I was there. Seeing Terry Funk win that belt, to me, was awesome. I will tell you, one of the most interesting things was watching after the show, watching the promos get shot. In some ways, the promos were more memorable as memorable as the show. Because I was there when Steve Austin did his whole Monday Night thing at the Travel Lodge. You know, I was there when Mick Foley did the whole Kane Dewey promos and those things. So seeing those happen and anticipating how they were going to affect the next show, again, thinking theatrically, that's what interested me. But when you see people evolve and develop, and you see somebody like Nova, who basically started out as a part of the BWO and used more as a comedy guy, and then he wound up working on himself and working on his skills. And then towards the end of ECW, he became a terrific worker in a more traditional sense. And someone who could really hang in the ECW. And he went from one perception and shifted it all. And that was his dedication and hard work. So watching everybody develop their skills and, also feeling like they had a place to be creative, I think was important, and watching their creativity blossom. So I'm sorry I can't come up with a more specific answer for you, but I mean, to me, it was always about it was always the process was the reward. You know what I mean? How they decided to have certain, how certain things evolved and unfolded, and watching the wrestlers benefit from that, and watching their skills improve, and watching them develop their connection. And you have somebody like Doring and Roadkill, who started out working together and watching them become so popular when they really started from scratch in front of an audience. They didn't exist anywhere else before ECW. So when you watch Paul take people like that and help build them to main event status, or combinations of workers together, that was always interesting to me.
Absolutely, I totally agree, and I've seen quite a lot of ECW from over the years, and I always thought this to myself, I would watch WCW, I'd watch WWF, and I'd always say, oh, they're not using this guy right, or they're not really making the most out of this person. But I look up and down the ECW roster, and not one person, I could never really think of one person that I thought wasn't used correctly or given an opportunity to show what they can do. And that's one of the magic things about ECW, was it didn't matter who it was, he would find a spot for them and they'll be able to blossom in that spot. And not one person I could say, oh, he really didn't do good by him. Everyone seemed to be looked upon to a higher standard as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's because Paul listened to the crowd. Paul watched the crowd. He listened to the crowd. That's all the difference to me, is that Paul didn't have such an ego that he had to say, I'm going to make this happen. He had an end goal, but if he had to take a detour to get there, he didn't mind doing that. If he needed to involve other characters in it and help enhance them on their way, he didn't mind that. And also the other thing is that ECW locker room was so collaborative. If someone had an idea, they could go to Paul and say, hey, what do you think about this? We've all gone to him with ideas that have been put on television and affected matches, and some would have an idea and he'd say, go over in the corner with so-and-so. He's going to explain to you what this is going to be. And that's how things evolve. People had ideas for themselves. They had ideas for other people. And if Paul liked them, they shared them. And it was a real collaboration. And that's how out of the box stuff came to be.
Definitely.
People weren't interested in doing the same old stuff.
Of course. And it's like, who thinks about a particular character more than the person that portrays that character on the show? They think about their character more than anybody else. Right. So if anybody's going to have a good idea about what they would like to do, then it should be that person who's thinking about it more than anybody else. That's just my point of view.
Or at least it's a way to figure out. They may have an idea about how to better manifest it.
Yes.
An idea is just an idea until it's processed and put in. I think the talent in ECW learned to become their characters. They inhabited their characters, which is the difference between when in other companies where they're handed a scripted promo.
Yeah.
Well, then they're asked to be something. Listen, those guys aren't. I mean, some of them have real ability and potential to do film and television stuff, but no one's trained to be an actor. They have to do all they do, and they have to be an actor too. They have to transform. That's why WWE has problems, because they have guys who, if you would just let them be themselves, because I've seen them on the indies, they'd be massively successful. But they think they have to rename them, rebrand them, change what they are, change even things that are successful. Oh, this worked in NXT. Well, that's minor. We can't allow ourselves to perceive that somebody who did something in NXT that's what belongs on the big stage.
Yeah.
And that's where the mistake is. They could have so many more stars and so many more crossover stars if they just paid attention. I mean, I look at somebody like the WWE. I look at somebody like Braun Strowman. Okay, they're going to remake the movie of The Princess Bride, and they need someone to be the giant guy. And of course, they do it with camera angles and whatever. But he's funny, he's personable, he's got a great look. You know, they had this whole thing about, well, we're trying when Nick Khan came in. Well, we're going to brand our people and we're going to make them available for other things and cross them over into other entertainment mediums. You have people who were perfect for that, and those are the people they were cutting.
Oh my God, I know, right?
When you look at it that way, you sit there and go, well, why are you doing that? Like, why can't you can't see there's money in that? It's so the lack of ego in that creative end in ECW was very key to its success.
Absolutely, Stephen. Love the point of view from you. This is really interesting stuff. I really feel like I'm getting a different perspective. I've had a bunch of ECW guys on the show, but it's really nice getting your perspective on this. I wanted to get back to talking a bit about ring announcing here, and I did this with Bob Artis.
Sure.
He was the first ring announcer I've ever had on the show. You're the second. But I wanted to list off some names of some other ring announcers from wrestling history, and just get a few words from you about what you think of their work.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'll start off with, of course, the one and only Bob Artis.
Listen, Bob was terrific. He was authentically himself all the time, which I think the fans in Philadelphia appreciated. And that's why he succeeded in form, because he was always consistently the same guy, and he was accessible to the fans. He's kind. He's a true gentleman. I can't say enough nice things about him, but I think that was the key to his success, was his accessibility and his authenticity.
Definitely.
And he had an appreciation. Coming from the tri-state era, just seeing it grow to Eastern and then Extreme and then all those things, he was the person who was there perhaps one of the longest on the entire journey. So he was like their godfather in the ring.
Yeah.
And he was if kids grew up with wrestling in Philadelphia, they grew up with Bob as their guy. And so but I love Bob. We come across each other on Facebook every so often and chat it up and stuff. But a terrific guy and a terrific talent, and added a lot to the early days. And I am, as I said, I'm grateful to him for being so welcoming to me and supportive of me.
Absolutely. Excellent. Yeah. What a gentleman. I had him on the show. Absolutely. Very nice man. Very nice man. Sure. Moving away from ECW, I'm going to ask you about some other ring announcers, just some thoughts from WCW and I believe in NWA as well. Gary Michael Capetta. What do you think of him?
Oh, I love Gary. I love Gary. Gary started in a different era than the ECW. He was pre the ECW era. But what Gary gave his own sense of theatricality to things. He almost approached it to me like he was the ringmaster, like the way a ringmaster would introduce the circus. and I'm not calling the athletes a circus, but in terms of his presentation of making sure to, from a 360 approach in the arena, making sure that he was talking to everybody in the arena, not just the people at the hard camera or in one direction. He always made sure to look around. If you look at old videos of him, he always looked around and looked at in the upper levels, and he looked there, and he would turn around, not during his intro, but when he would be in the ring, he would make sure to sort of make a 360 approach physically of the arena, and then would start. So he tried to hook in on them and acknowledge them before he started in the same way that someone might in Ringling Brothers.
Right, of course.
It was subtle, but that was I would look at him and go, oh, that's what he's doing. I don't know how conscious it was, but that's what it reminded me of.
Excellent. From the WWF, the one and only Tony Chimmel. What do you think of Tony's work?
Oh, I like Tony. Tony. What I like about Tony was Tony had a regular, everyman, blue collar approach. You know what I mean? He dressed up, but he didn't seem like he was, again, trying to make yourself seem more relatable and accessible. And I think that was Tony's gift, natural gift and approach. Tony was there. Also Tony had other duties at WWE too, because with the ring crew and all these other things. So, I admire that he was able to get so much done, considering how much responsibility they kept piling up on him over and over again. But again, he was like the everyman's ring announcer.
Excellent. Another one very beloved throughout the whole wrestling industry. You'll never forget him, the one and only Howard Finkel.
There will never be anybody like Howard Finkel.
Yeah.
There's Howard Finkel, and then there's everybody else. You know what I mean? I can't even you can't even if you were to put a top 5 list of ring announcers, Howard would be 1 through 5. Because he was classic.
Yeah.
And he was timeless. And he managed to, through all the permutations that WWE took as a brand and the way they presented himself, he was the spoke on which the wheel turned. Everything else could turn around him, but he was the steady. And he was consistent. And people knew, they knew him. And again, people grew up with him. And he was a great gentleman. He also had tons of other responsibilities, and you also knew that he generally loved being there.
Yeah.
It wasn't a job. It wasn't a job. And so to me, if I could, I would always ask, there were a few times where we've passed each other and done things, and we've always, but he's a lovely guy, a real loss for the business, but real loss because I know he was a great friend to so many people in the business. And a lot of people, a lot of the wrestlers, grew up with Howard Finkel. And then they're there going, oh my God, Howard Finkel's introducing me. To them, Howard Finkel introducing them was more important than the matches they were doing.
Yeah.
And that's the big compliment. Arriving I've arrived because Howard Finkel's interesting.
That's exactly it. What a great point to make. And may he rest in peace. Definitely the greatest of all time. Another guy I wanted to bring up, it's more kind of a late 90s WCW. Now he's in Impact Wrestling. He's been there over the years. The one and only Dave Penza.
I know Dave. Our paths have crossed a few times. We did the Brian Pillman Memorial shows. So that was where our paths crossed. Different styles. To me, Dave's approach is to try to make the audience come to him, by being standing there and being stoic and whatever, and bringing them in. Which is valid considering how over the top a lot of the gimmicks were in WCW at the time. He was sort of like a reset button for them.
Right.
Before the booking got so bad at WCW that things spiraled out of control, he was almost like, okay, that's over. Let's reset. and now let's have this experience. He made WCW more episodic, I think, in the way their television and show and pay-per-views were in events were presented, which is just, again, it's a different taste. You know?
Yep. I get you. And I like the analysis. That's really interesting perspective. Again, wanted to bring this lady up for my recollection, probably, I guess, the most well-known female ring announcer that there's ever been, Lillian Garcia.
Oh, well, Lillian brought an element of glamour to ring announcing. And she also brought, she couldn't help but bring her innate musicality, her background as a singer, to everything she did. So she presented it and made it seem like a special event because, it was like she was fronting for an all-star band as a singer. And she was introducing the members of the band around. But that was a very special time for WWE because, number one, it was about relatability and bringing younger audiences in, but also what it said about women in the business, and also created relatability for women in the audience too. So she was very, very, very important, and always, and the thing is, as a singer, she had a consistency, but being consistent does not mean being repetitive or boring or being on autopilot. What was consistent about her was the amount of focus she had and the amount of authentic. I keep using the word authenticity, but the amount of realness that she had in terms of just, hi, this is me. She didn't have any, because the thing is, she didn't have anybody else to emulate. Really, there was nobody out there that you could say, okay, I want you to be that. She could only be Lillian Garcia.
Definitely,
and that's where she really shined. I wish that the WWE had given her more opportunity to sing and perform. Yeah, I think that would have been. I think that could have been really something. And it could have been an interesting creative possibility for them, maybe.
Definitely. I mean, look, I'm Australian, and when she sings the United States national anthem or America the Beautiful, gives me goosebumps, and I'm not even American. So,
Sure.
Only a couple more people I wanted to ask you about.
Sure.
This guy's a little bit different. He's mostly in the boxing world, but he was in WCW for a brief period of time there. Michael Buffer.
I wish I felt like Michael Buffer was there because he really enjoyed wrestling. I wish he knew that he was there because he wanted to be there. Yeah. It's like a traveling band who shows up and goes, "It's so great to be in Poughkeepsie." Like he never was somewhere. Oh, it's too late to be in Boise, Idaho. It was so mechanical that it didn't seem like he really knew what was the importance of what it was he was announcing, because he would only do the main event, and yet I felt like, okay, you got the cue. Someone sent you an email and told you who's there, and then you just did it. There was no. I mean, the breaths were exactly the same place. The pauses were in exactly the same place. And if they thought that gave them authenticity because he came from the boxing world, so it made them feel more legit as a sport, I don't know that was necessarily successful. I think that what they did was it took away the emotional investment for the audience sometimes, and it can be presentational. I guess listen, it worked. God bless him. He's made a lot of money. They wanted him because he was yet another recognizable name or perceived to be a star on some level. But I don't know ultimately whether it had the effect that they hoped that they had by investing that much money.
Absolutely.
I found it to be. I don't think there's one difference from one Michael Buffer introduction to another one. I can't think of one. If you can think of one, let me know, because I'd be curious. But I just thought it was very, very premeditated. The thoughts have to come from your head to your voice. He was all like, reading the cue card in his head.
That's it.
You know, and to me that wasn't my that wouldn't have been my choice, because I think I don't know how that enhanced anybody really.
I understand. And Bob, when I went through these names with Bob Artis, this is the only person on the list, just like you, that wasn't glowing with compliments as well. So interesting to see the two ring announcers from ECW and how similar your thoughts are. The last person I wanted to bring up is this is strange, because like I always knew the ring announcers' names through all the years, through ECW, WCW, WWF, Lillian, Tony, Howard. And then there was this one other guy that I'm going to bring up. But then after him, I can't remember anyone else's name. And it's not any of their fault. I'm sure that they're quite good at what they do. But the company wasn't really giving out the names of even referees anymore. But
and to that end with the referee, I was like, well, how am I supposed to accept someone being an authority figure in the match with power to disqualify, end the match, and separate the guys and count and honor their count, if you won't tell me their names as a referee?
Yeah.
If you won't give them the authority and the recognition, how can I think that they're going to have the authority to really make an impact on this match?
That's it.
And so I think that's part of it. I understand the idea of maybe not interesting ring announcer. That's fine. You know, we're the on a platter, we're the parsley. We're the garnish. We make the plate look pretty. We may or may not have a little nutritional value, but we're not the side dishes, and we're not the main course. We're the garnish. But the referees certainly are much more important than that.
Definitely. I could rattle off Scott Dickinson from WCW, Billy Silverman, Nick Patrick, Charles Robinson from the WWE, Mike Sparks, Mike Chioda, Earl Hebner, ECW. John Finnegan, Mike Keener, Jim Molyneux, all of these names. I can remember all of them. Yes, Pee Wee Moore. I can remember everyone's names, but now don't know any of the referees' names, don't know any of the ring announcers' names. But the last guy whose name is still remembered is Justin Roberts. He's currently with AEW. What do you think of Justin Roberts?
Listen, I met Justin twice. Always great. I love his energy. I love his passion. You know, he came from being a fan, like a legitimate fan. So he was born to do this. I mean, I don't know a lot about Justin to know what his other skills are, but if someone was born to do this because of his care and his love of it so much, it's Justin, I think. And I will say also, you know, he doesn't get credit for it enough, but you know, Justin was instrumental in that whole the whole WWE relationship with Conor Mahalik. Yeah, was very involved with that, and there would be no Conor's Cure, I don't believe, without Justin. So while he doesn't get credit for it as a person, I think, you know, that to me is enough. That shows who he is as a human being. So while I don't know him, and I enjoy his work and all those things, but as a human being and for his sensitivity and his empathy, I think very highly of him as a person.
Excellent, Stephen. Well, thank you so much for the insight on all of those ring announcers. I really found that interesting. It's like you went through it like it's like with a fine tooth comb, like it's a science behind it. So I really enjoyed that. I want to get back to a little bit of ECW chat before we get to the tail end here. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Were you there for that show?
No, I was not there.
So Bob wasn't either. Who was?
No, I know. I think someone did the announcements from behind the curtain.
Okay.
I think they just did the announcements from behind the curtain, and I think they put a voice modulator or something on it so you wouldn't recognize who it was.
Okay.
And that's how it happened. No, I had no clue. And that was I think that was a situation where I think I was not available that weekend too. Like I had no clue. Like if someone had tipped me off at all, I certainly might have been there, but I had no idea. You know, at that time, we were still working on trying to save ECW.
Yeah.
And you know, I want to say one thing about the end of ECW because it's something that I have knowledge of that a lot of people may or may not know. But a lot of people, you know, have that whole perception of Paul was out shooting rollerball when he was supposed to be saving ECW, and he didn't go. You know, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. the truth is this. I was involved with Rollerball on the casting end. The casting director was a friend of mine. She said, we need different announcers from different countries. You know somebody, you know, different wrestling announcers from around the world, you know, in different countries. And so I taught, and Paul auditioned initially when they shot Rollerball. At the time when ECW was folding, they made a decision not to have an American announcer in that movie at all. It was just going to be all foreign voices, or maybe someone from London, you know, that kind of thing, but no American voices. When they test screened it, they found that the audience wanted one. So they then had to go in and do reshoots. When those reshoots happened, and Paul was involved in Rollerball, they didn't happen in California. They happened, they shipped the sets to New York. Paulie recorded all those segments in New York a good year after that movie. He'd already started back with WWE by then.
Right.
So when people talk about, you know, Paulie gave up the ship and deserted everybody and wasn't trying to save ECW because he was shooting Rollerball, he absolutely was not shooting Rollerball. And it can be documented. We went to the film commission and you went and looked for a certificate of, because you have to be licensed to shoot and file with all the unions. You could find the exact period of when those reshoots took and what studio they took place at. So I just wanted to do that and clear the air, because I know that has always bothered me when I hear people talk about it. And it's because they hear it from somebody else.
Yeah.
And they say, you know, and Paul's never corrected it, but I'm going to correct it because I think he's gotten a bad rap in that end. I know that he was dealing with tons of politics at the networks and, you know, a couple of bad bounces with, you know, executive changes. And that's ultimately was the issue. It had nothing to do with his efforts in any way. And I believe he gave everything he had at that point in time. And certainly, and if he had other things that distracted from that, it 100% was not Rollerball. So
Fair enough.
Anyway,
well,
I'm sorry. So I'll get back to you, answer your question if I can remember what it was.
No, that's okay. We've kind of covered it. I actually forgot something that I wanted to ask you about, because everybody that was at this show, I always ask about, because we want to do a big video where we have everybody talk about this particular event. Heatwave 2000. I believe you're ring announcing on the show, and there is a ruckus with the XPW guys in the front row. Can you please tell me just your story from your perspective, what you saw happen during that main event?
It was interesting because, God, what was the name of the first message boards that were on before there was an AOL? What was it called? I can't remember what it was called. Why can't I remember what it was called? Showing my age. There was a guy, I knew something was up because there was a guy on a message board that was a big XPW fan who was talking about stuff's going to go down at the event, It was Rexport Pro Wrestling, I guess was what it called, was a chapter. And so I started talking to this guy, but he didn't not know who I was. And so he, we're going to do, we're going to disrupt the pay-per-view, and I was like, oh, okay. So I said, hey, I might want to join you. What should we? They said, oh, we're going to do flyers. We're going to do whatever. So we did that. And then, and so I sort of was tipped. I said, hey, there's this chatter out there. And so we were at the event. And then of course we saw them there because we got tipped off. Someone in our locker room knew them, and some of the guys, and they're in the front row, so we knew. So we kept our eye on them the whole time. And then I was ringside, and I was on the other side. Of course, Gorgeous George was at the match, involved in the match, and I just met George that night. So when it all came down, I immediately got to ringside. I was at ringside, but I ran around the other side to protect George, to have someone there with George, because I thought she's the only one vulnerable in this match, because she came out with, she came up in Dreamer and then did the turn thing. But so that was my perspective was obviously wasn't in the ring when it happened. I was I headed towards the floor, towards George. But I've never seen big guys move so fast. That's my impression. My impression is Sally Graciano and Chili Willy were the two fastest human beings I've ever seen coming through that curtain and flying. I mean, from the end of the entranceway around the guardrail to where those guys were in the center, I mean, it couldn't have taken us 2 seconds. They were the first ones through. I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, I guess Chili Willy's going to get a push now. Because he was so plus. But I remember the story that, of course, it all spilled out into the parking lot. And, normally, Paul's on the headset backstage, in Gorilla, and Nova was in the shower. And Nova comes out, and there's nobody in the locker room. He's in a towel, and he sees this speaker thing, and he puts it on. I was like, "Hey, is anybody there? What's going on?" He's watching the show. I was like, "What's happening?" But I stayed ringside, obviously, for the whole thing. But that was crazy. That was crazy, and I just remember that it got heated really fast. It wasn't a slow burn.
Yeah.
Whatever happened was on both sides was totally reactionary. In terms of just that quick. And I've run into some of those guys over the years, and they were everyone was trying to protect their turf. I think they were trying to help their own cause. But it was quick. It was quick. I'm trying to think of, it was a big blur. And then, of course, I kept thinking, the other thing that people don't talk about is when people were making entrances. I don't know if you noticed, but they were dropping flyers, XPW flyers, over the entranceway.
Right.
Down onto them. But I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, this is a diversion, and then they've got something else planned in the arena.
Right.
Like they're going to pull everyone's attention here, and they have something bigger planned. It's too obvious. It's too easy. We know they're there. They've got the shirts. They turn them up. We've identified them. I kept thinking, there might be something else. There wasn't. Smart thinking would have meant that they would have been, but there was not any. Thank God. But I was like, I came back afterwards, and of course, by the time the match was over, the parking lot stuff was over too. But that was a bit of a blur. But I remember seeing Sal and Chili Willy flying, just flying. And the thing about the ECW locker room is that locker room is united. No matter what your history is, whether someone's your friend in real life or an acquaintance, or they're not your personal taste and you don't hang out with them, if something happened ever, everybody could count on everyone else.
Definitely.
There were never any questions asked. They jumped in. You need me, I'm there. They were a band of brothers. And I see that now still, when I'm on different shows, or if I go to a convention here or there, and I'm there, and you see them, and you see everyone reunite, and it's like a family reunion.
Excellent to hear, and thanks for that perspective. That's the first time I heard about Nova was in the shower whilst all this happened, and walked into an empty locker room or whatever backstage area.
With the headset sitting there. It's like, hello.
That's fantastic.
When you interview him, ask him about it. He'll tell you.
I'll keep chipping away. Hopefully, one day I can get in touch with him. But thanks for that perspective, Stephen. Awesome stuff. Wanted to bring it back to the end of ECW. Once it's confirmed that it's actually over, how did it make you feel? You're used to seeing your big family of friends on such a such a constant level, and Now you're not going to see them every week, several times a week. Now it's gone. You might see them if you do some shots on the indies as a ring announcer, etc. But it won't be everybody. How did it make you feel, kind of losing that, I guess, family environment every few days?
I was saddened because I thought, all those guys deserved the opportunities they were being afforded. And I thought, oh my goodness, there are guys here who have made all these sacrifices, and their families have also shared in that sacrifice, and they may never get a chance to be on the level they deserve to be and to make the kind of money that they deserve to be and to have their dream come true and to be acknowledged for what they've done and how they've contributed to the business. Because, ECW changed the business. And yet, because of different situations and politics and personalities, someone may never get that opportunity again. I was saddened for them. For me, it was never my intention to be involved in wrestling. So, I'm very happy with my career, and in my producing and producing Broadway concerts and doing different things. And so for me, it's a chance to blow off some steam and have some fun and enjoy and really appreciate the guys. But it was really just sad for me that they might not have their opportunity. After being so much, they would only not have the opportunity because people wouldn't have enough vision to be able to see them for what they had to offer, and that was the sad part for me.
I completely understand. Speaking of the word stand, I wanted to bring it to 2005. I wanted to talk about ECW One Night Stand, Hammerstein Ballroom. This is me. My friends bought the pay-per-view. I don't know how old we were at the time, 2005. Oh, Jesus, that's 16 years ago. So I was, quite some time ago. But very memorable show for all of us fans. How did it feel to be in that environment again? Did it feel like that old, authentic ECW feel? You're in New York. You're in the Hammerstein Ballroom. You got everyone that you possibly can get there. Unfortunately, not everyone could be on the show. But how did ECW One Night Stand, the first one that came around, how did that feel?
Well, I was just so happy for the fans.
Yeah.
Because, while the wrestlers didn't get closure, even more so the fans didn't get closure. The fans never got acknowledged for their dedication and for their role in what ECW grew to become. And so to me, I thought, well, this is really for the fans. This is a chance to thank the fans. There's a chance to remind everybody that, hey, ECW did change the business. And ECW was important. And you can try to make believe that it didn't, but I don't think Steve Austin would ever have drank a beer if it weren't for the Sandman. There's a million things that I could point to that ECW started, influenced, and then other people co-opted, modified, or whatever. I mean, the way the matches are paced, all that stuff. So I thought it was a great acknowledgement of where things could be going. It's interesting. I'll share a little something. The original script for ECW One Night Stand actually was in the script, but they didn't do it that way. They changed it. Was Paul and Vince backstage, and Vince saying, "Gee, Paul, maybe ECW is not dead after all."
Oh, really?
They didn't, as you know, they didn't end it that way, or whatever. But that was my first hint that maybe there would be something else moving on. It took a year later for them to do it, but there was like a hint of like maybe promise of something, or maybe they were just going to bring some ECW guys in. They wanted to acknowledge it, on some level. But that was in the script. In fact, the script is in storage at my dad's house up in Rhode Island. I have it up there. No.
That is an exclusive right here. As far as I've never heard that story before. So for me, that is amazing to hear that. I can't believe that was potentially.
I also have something interesting when they sent me my contract to do the first One Night Stand. They sent me a contract as a wrestler. They sent me one of the wrestlers' contracts. So I have a signed. It's like, sign this and send it back to us. We've already signed it. So I have a signed WWE contract offering me to wrestle on One Night Stand. So that's enough in storage too. But I always thought I got offered a wrestling contract by WWE. I've never taken it on, but I have it.
That's amazing, Steve. That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to have to bring it up. It is 2006. They do the second One Night Stand. I know it's not the same as the first one. They got some more WWE guys on the show, like your Kurt Angles, which is that's a welcome addition. But the ECW is going to be returning soon after this. But I know that this is a pretty big moment for you to be a part of this show. At the end of the show, what do we get to see? We get to see Rob Van Dam beat John Cena for the championship and bring back the ECW championship. How was this day for you?
Listen, I was happy for Rob. I was so happy for Rob. I was, again, happy for the fans because, again, it's an acknowledgement. It's an acknowledgement that the ECW guys were at the level of the WWE guys and should be treated that way and respected. And so I think it enhanced everybody, and to see that was great. It was an interesting night, and we'll get into. I'm sure I know where you're headed, but that day, I saw the other guys, and I said to Paul, I said, "Hey, Paul, there's so much WWE guys here. Should I WWE it up a little bit and take some of my intensity out? Should I modify myself?" And Paul said, "Listen, I don't know. He said, that's your call. He said, I always trust you." And I said to him at the time, I said, this might be very well the last chance that to be authentic.
Yeah.
For these. Yeah. Once we're on television, then Vince is really involved. I said, and they're programming now. They're not writing scripts. They're not developing. They're programming. I said, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it the way I would traditionally do it. And I did. And then after the show, and I was told, you're booked on all these shows. Here's, here's the TV tapings on Tuesday in New Jersey. Here's the whole thing. As I am wont to do, because of my entertainment background, I went and thanked everybody. I actually went to the production truck and thanked Kevin Dunn. And he shook my hand. He said, "Great job tonight." He said, "You're with us Tuesday, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll be there." I said, "What time do you want me there?" He said, "Oh, he said, like, if you're there by 3, that's great." I said, "Great. No problem." And then, so all was good. And then somehow between Sunday night and Tuesday, they had decided that, they were already paying Justin Roberts. Justin was doing, main event and doing the other TV shows and was a backup guy. So he was already there. They're paying him already. So I think someone went, well, we got this younger guy. We want to rebrand this thing and whatever. But, they didn't think about it. Listen, I have no problem. If it's their show, they can do what they want. Do I wish I could have had a chance to do that show in Madison Square Garden? Yes. Do I wish that I had not canceled plans because they had promised me certain shows? Do I think I could have made a difference when they went to Philadelphia to the arena the first time and that crowd was merciless to Justin Roberts? From what I hear, they were horribly brutal to him.
Oh gosh.
I could have been of service, I think, in terms of getting that crowd to accept him and sooner. And I would have happily done that. But there was a decision, all of a sudden I'm there and all of a sudden I get, Justin Roberts, please come to ringside, I hear. And then someone comes and gets me and walks me to the back. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I walk to the back and they say, "Oh, you're done. We're not going to use you, you're done and we're not going to be using you. And we'll be in touch if we need you for like Philadelphia and these other things." So they're still scattered around the fact that maybe they would have a thing, but I wasn't going to be doing the TV that night. So I said, at the time, I said, well, if you're going to do this thing on Sci-Fi, I have an idea. So if you're going to replace me with Justin, we should do the Star Trek thing. I should be backstage and you should beam me out and beam Justin. Like when somebody teleports. Yeah. If you can teleport me out and teleport, we have to do it in the ring. Do something. I said, "You're on Sci-Fi." And they laughed and went, "Nah, we can't. I can't discuss that with anybody." I was like, oh, "Okay." So just too late or whatever. I was like, okay. I said, just being creative. I said, no, it's really a shame though. I said, because, you know, I mean, I will tell you that like in my career as a casting director, I mean, I've hired over 100,000 actors in my career, you know, and a lot of it. So I have a lot of celebrity friends who are, you know, there. And I talked to them about ECW and it's on Sci-Fi, and they said that they would come on the show. And these are major names that would have crossed over, and they would have been in the audience. They would have come to the show and agreed to whatever. So we're like, great. So, but I hadn't talked to anybody about it. So I said, you know, it's really I was talking, I'll tell you who was. The person who walked me back was Laurinaitis. And so Laurinaitis walks me back to get paid. And I said, you know, this is really a shame. He said, well, you know, kid, I know how you feel it's a shame. I said, it's not a shame for me, it's a shame for you. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, you have no idea what I really do in my career or my connections. I said, the same way you don't know what other people do here other than what you tell them to do. I said, but I have the connections with this person and I've talked to them. I said, he goes, oh, that would be fucking great. Can we still do it? I said, well, now you can't. I said, they're not gonna do it for you. I said, I wouldn't call their agents and ask them to do it. They would do it because I would call them at home and do that. And so that's what, and so it never happened, but they would have been, they were really great, fun, creative ideas, and it would have addressed that whole sci-fi aspect.
Wow.
You know? Can you hold on a second? I'll
yeah,
be on
sure.
Time. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just being recorded in an interview. My daughter, I have to drive her somewhere. So yes.
No worries, Stephen. We're getting close.
Anyway,
to
no, I'm cool. But anyway, but that's how that ended. And I, you know, very sadly drove home. And of course I watched the show and I was like, okay, you were right. There's a freaking zombie in the ring. And I loved him, the late Tim Arson. He's a great guy, and I'm glad he got an opportunity, and he was able to mine that for some gigs on the indies. But I thought, okay, the minute you took the Sandman's music away, the minute you changed those things, you changed those characters. I'm happy the guys got made money, but I would not. You know, it was interesting. I mean, it was an interesting experience. It was interesting. I want to give one, before you get to your other thing, I want to give one brief shout out. The first person to reach out to me after that happened and called me when I was in my car and checked up on me every day for weeks was Francine. Okay? Francine, as a human being, is a top-notch woman. Always was as a performer, always was. But to me, if you said to me, who's the kindest person in the business that you've come across? Not only because of that, but for everything before that, I would tell you Francine.
Oh, that's nice of her.
I want to acknowledge that. You know, and then one day she called me and she was with Jazz. She and Jazz both called me together. They were together in the airport and they called me flying somewhere. So it was very, I just want to thank her. I'll publicly thank her for her thoughtfulness and her kindness.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that story there, Stephen.
I knew you were going there anyway. So I thought, let me, because I know in your head you're going, how do I say this? How do I phrase this? How do I ask this? You know.
Well, here's the thing. As a fan, when I was watching it, first red flag, you're not going to be ring announcing. Second red flag, all of a sudden Atlas Security aren't there. Third red flag. Now the ECW referees are slowly but surely disappearing. I think John was there for a bit, but the other guys kind of disappeared as well. So like I could see this happening, and I'm like, don't do it again. Don't break my heart again, because I always say this when I have the chance to. WWE broke my heart when they ruined the invasion angle, strike one. They ruined the NWO coming in, strike two. And then when they promised ECW and didn't deliver ECW, strike three. Since then, I haven't really watched it on the level that I did back then. And that's 16 years ago, and I'm still doing a podcast 16 years later about something that I love. Wrestling hasn't loved me the way that I've loved it, is what I'm trying to say.
I knew I was the first, but I said to everybody, I said, guys, I'm the first, I'm not the last.
Yeah.
I'm the first, I'm not the last. I said, it pains me to say that to you. I said, but be aware, be vigilant, because I will not be the, I would not be the last there. And that's, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
It ultimately, listen, believe me, I have a busy enough career. Trying to juggle, trying to be available for those shows. that was like, oh my God. That was, I'm like, it turned out for the best. I would rather had my head held high, pridefully, and say I was on that pay-per-view when Rob won the belt. Yeah. If that's my last WWE, I wanted to be on an ECW show. I didn't want to be on a WWE ECW show.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I wanted to say, because this is important for me to say things like this. The news reports I remember reading at the time, on the dirt sheets and all that. It was that Kevin Dunn apparently thought that your voice was annoying. If that's true, I just want to say this to Kevin Dunn. Kevin, I think it's really annoying when there's a brawl on the outside of the ring and you make the camera zoom in and out like that. I think that's annoying. I also think it's annoying the way that you make the show looks way too glossy and nice, and the way that you produce the show. It's not Monday Night Raw anymore. It's Monday Night Contrived. You can put a video screen on everything, ring posts. You can put it on the barricades if you want. You can put it on everything that you can put the video screens on people's faces in the crowd there. As far as I'm concerned, bro, you're annoying. Stephen DeAngelis is not. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Not a problem, sir. Okay, getting towards the tail end here. You were a part of the initial Major League Wrestling MLW.
Absolutely.
I remember being in Australia at the time, knowing MLW was around and having no way of getting to see any of the footage. So this is, the early 2000s. You're a part of it then. I was so excited about it. It did go away, unfortunately, before I got to see any of it. But I thought, from what I was reading online, it sounded really exciting. It was
very exciting, and it only went away because of the way things were going. Because a lot of the investors and interest in the show were international, because it had a big success in Japan. And at the time, there was a lot of issues with when you brought money into the United States from different countries, right? So everything's under question. So there was just such a lag time between being able to do finance internationally that's really what slowed MLW down, from my estimation. Because how do you do it? Yeah. If someone said, okay, we're going to pay you for your merchandise, and you send the merchandise, and then someone wires you money, and then the money has to sit there, and you don't know how long the money is going to sit there before you can pay your bills. What do? You're trapped. So that's what I think needed MLW originally. I'm very happy it's back. I'm very happy to have been doing shows with them recently. They're rejiggering their schedule, so we'll see what happens for the future. Though, though I've been said, hey, are you available? Through March and whatever. We'll see. But they moved shows to Dallas from Philly and different things. So we'll see whether the schedule works out. But I have great admiration for what they've done and what they do and how they make so much. They make so much more out of less resources, and somehow they manage to.
Yeah, I just saw a picture the other day where they had 5,000 people in one of the buildings, and I was like, that is, I'm so happy to see that.
Right. Well, they have a quality. Also they do their homework, and they also aren't afraid to hire new guys and develop new guys, knowing that someone with a bigger pocketbook is going to steal them. Doesn't deter them. MJF was there first. Look at all the guys who were there. Sammy Guevara was there first. Darby Allin was there before there was an AEW. The AEW should be writing a commission check to MLW.
Pillman Jr. Yeah.
True. All that. So here's the deal. I have 5 minutes before I have to drive my daughter.
Okay.
So do you want to pick this back up, or do you want to go down your rundown?
I can wrap this up now, Stephen. Okay. I only had a couple more questions anyway.
Okay. Sure.
Before I get to this, that's okay. I'm going to get to the segment, 5 second frenzy, 5 seconds to answer each question. So we should be able to get through it.
Sure.
First question here, Stephen. Who is your favorite wrestler?
Terry Funk.
Over the years, was there a favorite match that you saw in ECW, or a favorite moment in your time?
Funk in the Box. Do you remember the Funk in the Box moment?
Yes.
You remember? Yeah. Funk in the Box.
Wonderful. Okay, getting away from wrestling now. Favorite book?
Favorite book. What was the last book I read? The Godfather.
Wonderful. Favorite TV show?
This week's the new Dexter.
Excellent,
Dexter
excellent.
On Showtime.
Very nice. Favorite film?
Princess Bride.
Lovely, lovely. Favorite musical artist?
Oh God, favorite musical artist. Wow, I've got so many. That's a tough one. I'm screwing up the 5 seconds. Favorite musical artist. Prince.
Awesome choice, awesome choice. Getting away from the arts, only a few left here. Favorite food?
Spaghetti and meatballs.
Lovely. Favorite place to eat on the road?
Waffle House.
Everyone says it. Favorite alcoholic beverage?
A shot of peach schnapps.
Very nice. Second last one, Stephen, the naughtiest one. Favorite female body part? You see a good-looking lady, what does Stephen DeAngelis' eyes go to first?
The eyes.
Very good choice, very good choice. And the last one, Stephen, favorite curse word?
Oh fuck! I don't know. I don't know. I mean, is there anybody? It's like fuck is like the Howard Finkel of curse words. Like there's that, and then there's everybody else, right? So, how do you even have it? How do you even have a second choice?
Excellent, Stephen. Well, I think that's record time there for 5 Second Frenzy. You did a very good job there. Last question before we sail off to the sunset. What do you hope Stephen DeAngelis is most remembered for in his time in pro wrestling?
Creating opportunity for talented people.
Wonderful. Well, Stephen, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show with me. I know we went a little bit long here, and I'm sorry to your daughter for holding you up a little bit, but I really want to thank you. And I always say this when, you know, it means the most. I live in the most isolated city in the world, Perth, Western Australia. And I think that speaks volumes, the fact that it reached so far. You reached so far, all the way over here, most isolated city in the world, and someone was a fan of your work and what you've done. So I hope you're very proud of what you've accomplished in professional wrestling. And I hope you're very proud of what you've accomplished in life, because everything that you seem to have done, 100,000 people you've hired for things, make a wish, and making kids' last wishes come true. That means a lot. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being on this planet, my friend.
Well, Carl, I thank you for anything. Anytime you need me for anything, reach out. It was a pleasure, and I thank you for the opportunity.
No worries, Stephen. Thank you. And thank you, everyone out there, for watching the Insider's Edge podcast here. I'm Karlifornia, alongside Stephen DeAngelis, and we will see you down the road. Thank you.